The woman who faked her own abduction will appear in court today, days after her appeal trial was canceled by an Alabama judge. Carly Russell topped national headlines last summer. You probably remember she went missing after a 911 call where she reported a toddler on the side of the highway. The nursing student returned home, though, unscathed 2 days later. Then later admitted she made it all up, and she was found guilty of the hoax 5 months ago. Misty Marris is a legal analyst, joins us live with more to talk, Misty, about what happens now. So we know that this judge ordered her state trial removed from the docket. Instead, there is today's plea hearing. Explain what all of that really means.
Yeah, so it's a little confusing, but this is the way the structure of the legal system is in Alabama. So she was charged with misdemeanors. Misdemeanors go before a municipal court. So that's a lower level court. That is the court that actually found her guilty and brought this sentence of 1 year in jail based on that guilty determination. Now, she did immediately appeal. In that appeal, it goes to the state level court. What happened here is that there's going to be a review because now there's going to be a plea agreement to reevaluate and revisit that sentence. So any defendant is going to try and get that into a state court if they're found guilty, because that's a court that sees felonies and misdemeanors. And so there's the possibility of a lighter sentence. So this was really a strategy by the defense team.
Okay, so talk about the strategy a little bit more, Misty. What will her defense team likely use as they go into that courtroom today?
So let's think about what this case is really about. It's about her falsely reporting that she was abducted, false police report, diverting tremendous resources from those in need to investigating her case, taking the community who was in peril at the time, thinking that somebody just disappeared into thin air on the side of the road. Those are all of the issues. So the strategy would be to be remorseful for her actions. Something that I think is interesting, we still don't know her motivations to do this. Perhaps from the defense perspective, it would be helpful to explain that and in this plea agreement to say that she's very, very sorry and explain why, because I think the why is a question that's on many people's minds.
And Misty, I wanted to talk to you about that. I mean, do you think we will ever know? And if she would use that as part of a plea, do you think that could potentially help reduce that sentence if she would have to spend time in jail?
Yeah, I think from a defense perspective, that would be very, very helpful to talk about the motivations and then to really, really be apologetic and to show that she understands that there was a lot of severity to what she did, not only to the police department, to the community. One of the issues here is deterrence, right? To ensure that others don't make these false reports and create the same issue. I think that many people looked at this as a victimless crime, but it was not a victimless crime because of everything that was forsaken in order to investigate her case. And again, I emphasize the impact on this community, thinking that there was somebody capable of an abduction at large. So there's a lot of moving parts here. But for her to come into the courtroom, fall on the sword, maybe tell her motivations, and also be very, very apologetic, I think that's the best way to perhaps reduce the sentence from jail time.
You know, and Misty, you talked about it, you know, the community there. I know people around the nation really were so concerned about her because it did seem like such an, just unbelievable situation. And people were genuinely worried. And because of that, how likely do you think it is that Carly will have to spend at least some time in jail?
Well, so here's the interesting part about this. There's currently legislation to increase the severity of what's on the books for filing a false police report and making a false claim to police. So it might be moved out of that bucket of a misdemeanor. However, currently she's charged with a misdemeanor. So if she does come in, she pleads guilty, she has remorse, I think you could see that jail time being reduced. However, the next person to do this in Alabama is going to have a much bigger problem if that legislation is passed. That's really the effect of this whole situation on what happens next, is a much more severe penalty under the law, not only being charged as a felony, but also, think about this, requiring full restitution for every dollar spent in the course of a false investigation. That's a tremendous amount of money.
Yeah, because there were a lot of resources put into the search for her. We'll certainly see what happens. Misty Marris, as always, thank you.
Thank you.